Hey guys, welcome back. Or if this is your first time here, then just welcome. I watch bad movies and then review them. This time I watched Wounds, 2019. It's available on Hulu if you would like to watch it. However, I don't recommend it. Wounds is like the divorce papers that Lovecraft would write if his soon to be ex wife already owned the rights to all of the Cthulhu mythos. So the movie opens up with a quote from Heart of Darkness about how he's hollow and it told him things about himself that he didn't know. Hashtag deep. The movie starts with our protagonist Will working the bar at Rosie's. At the bar, there's this couple, Alicia and Jeffrey. Will kind of like flirts with Alicia. He's like, if you take your top off, there's free drinks. And then there's this lady, Mary, in the back who's like, yeah, that's how I get mine. She's not important though. She's really just there for that one joke. And then Will takes the trash out where he meets Eric. Eric is basically the unspoken main character of this story. He's a good old boy who's portrayed by the bigger guard guy from Orange is the New Black. Will comes back and Jeffrey is in the bathroom. Will offers Alicia a drink. She refuses. She's basically like, I'll wait for my boyfriend. Thank you. Alicia's a semi-loyal chick, that's for sure. So Eric shoves Jeffrey up against a pillar as he comes out of the bathroom. And he does it in a threatening way at first, but then he plays it off like a joke. And then they all sit down at the bar together and then start drinking. Eric throws an orange peel at Jeffrey. He calls them a progressive couple. I didn't mention this, but they are people of color. That's semi-relevant here. Eric is a weird example of racism, though, because I feel like most racists aren't going to throw orange peels at you and then offer to buy you a drink. Will's approached by what is clearly a minor. He serves them anyways. Alicia calls him out on it. She's like, he's underage. And he's like, they don't mean any harm. That's what we call dramatic irony. So Eric's friends show up. Will and Jeffrey went to Tulane. They have this whole back and forth about that. Then Eric gets into a fight with one of his friends. During the earlier part of the scene, you actually see them sharing camaraderie, I guess. The game of pool doesn't go so great because they get into a bar fight and the guy stabs Eric in the face with a broken beer bottle. Jeffrey comes over and he rescues Eric. Eric punches the guy repeatedly in the face. And then Will tries to get Eric to go to the hospital, but Eric thinks hospitals are for pussies. He's not bothered at all by the broken beer bottle that has torn open his face. Alicia says that pulling a knife in a bar fight is chicken shit, which I thought was crazy because it's like, how many bar fights have you been in, Alicia? You need to calm down with that. Will finds one of the college kids' phones. It's very menacing. It's like a yellow and it's got like a little heart on the back, so it's definitely haunted or something. Will, Alicia, and Jeffrey all drink together. Will arrives home drunk at like 2:35 a.m. The phone told me that. I pay attention, movie. Whenever he arrives home drunk, he tries to smash, but his girlfriend isn't having it. So again, at this point, Will goes to drink. Will starts to look at the phone. He sees the text message on the lock screen, and it's like, "There's something here. It's the thing from the tunnel." So then Will puts the phone up to the light, and there's this perfect smudge mark in the shape of a triangle that allows him to just instantly guess the password in one attempt. Whatever. I tried that on my phone, but the smudge marks just didn't work that way. So he does all of that just so he can say, hey, you guys left your phone at the bar. Very underwhelming. Cockroach shows up. The text message, it beeps again and goes off. And it's like, help me. And then at this point, he says, I'm a bartender, quit fucking around. Which was strange because, I've never done that in any situation. It may be because of my line of work, but I'm never like, hey, I'm a data analyst, but you just need to knock that off. He puts the phone down. There's going to be a lot of points here where Will just completely avoids the mysterious plot that's unfolding behind him. Cut to Carrie making a decadent breakfast. It's got muffins. You got a whole bowl of berries. There's bacon. There's eggs. As she's cooking, Will comes up and he tries to smash, but she's like, I don't want to burn the eggs. Will is jealous of Carrie's professor, and Carrie is insecure about the like yellow phone. She asks how he knew to unlock it, and then he gets all smug about it. And I feel personally insulted just because that wouldn't work in real life. So you don't get to be all like boastful about your plot armor there. The phone buzzes. Apparently, last night they texted pictures of removed human teeth. They're like scattered on a table with like what looks like red food dye. Carrie wants to give the phone to the police because at this point she's making good decisions. Will reluctantly agrees. He tries to smash again, not at all dissuaded by the human teeth that he's just seen on the phone. But he smells terrible. So then Will drives her to like her college class or whatever, and they get there, and then Will just starts going in on this speech about how people who go to college are idiots, especially the people who are like taking classes from her professor. He sees no problem with this. So then Will says, "I love you," and she slams the door on him, which I mean, he had it coming. So then she goes and hugs the professor. And the big takeaway from this scene is that her professor doesn't smell. Something to think about, guys. Will invites Alicia out for a beer while he's driving. She says no. Will's being followed by a black charger. Will goes to his job and he talks to Rosie. She tells him to check on Eric. Will does go to check on Eric. Eric looks like he got Wolverined in the face, and he won't seek treatment because they'll ask questions, which is completely ridiculous. If you see his face, he looks like a Jaws victim. Like just make up a lie, bro. Just tell him you fell on a chain link fence. I don't know. Walks to his bedroom. Will sees like this Confederate flag that's like split out on like the wall, and then Eric is like, "What?" And uh, Will's just like nothing, which I think just goes to show like how cowardly this movie is when it comes to like portraying that aspect of it. Because I feel like the implication we're supposed to take here, uh, this in addition to like a line that happens later in the movie, is that Eric is a racist. Um, but it doesn't like do enough to like establish that. And also like it even seems like the movie is trying to establish a kind of sympathy with him because at the end of this scene he's basically like this scared kid and he looks up at Will and he's like, I have nightmares, will you stay here? And then Will's like, yeah, because Eric has beer. So Will immediately goes and he grabs himself a beer. When he does, he notices that Eric has a picture of him and a small child on his fridge. So Eric is a dad. Um, it's never going to come up again in this movie, but it was good to know, I guess, for that one scene, the extra character development there. There's a long scene where Will just kind of watches Eric as he sleeps. Will's sitting on a chair like this, and then it starts doing the whoa, 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 kind of scary music, right? And it's trying to build tension, and then it goes to a jump scare of an air conditioner unit, which, like, nothing is scarier than a cool environment. I always say that. Will walks the street. He runs into this like tap dancing clapper. It's just I can't do it, but he's doing that, and like I think it's weird that the movie's already introduced like somebody having their teeth just like and still we have time for this as a side diversion. I guess the movie just decided it was cooler than anything else it had going on. Will runs into Jeff and Alicia. Jeff's nice. He's like, hey, I got a good grade on my paper. And then Will just kind of bullies him. He's like, oh, you get a gold star. Uh, just furthering his hatred of college, really. Will eats a sandwich as two teens watch him from a bench in the park. Will goes home. He acts like somebody's there. He does the horror movie thing where he's like calling for Carrie. As he like walks through, it's just Carrie, Carrie. Um, which is weird because a normal person's just gonna say hey on the first go. He fridges a sandwich. This is important. The movie makes a point of showing us the sandwich continuity, so I think that's cool. Pockets the phone and then he starts gaming. This is another one of those things that just happens as a one-off thing. uh, he's not even really gaming. He presses like three buttons and then he gets distracted by the phone and he's just immediately back into that. The phone asks if he's seen the pretty pics. Being like he's kind of creep, so he just like checks the pictures. There's some regular photos of the teen who has been following him, and then we get to there's like a gunshot one, and then there's like a decapitated head on a table, and there's like roaches like swarming around it, and then like a hand starts to come up out of the decapitated skull, and then someone screams, and then Carrie opens the door. It's it's the scariest part of the movie by far, and it escalates the movie in a way that the rest of it doesn't really follow through on. When Carrie walks in, she presses him about the phone again, and then he claps back about the professor, and she like goes to offer him her phone just to be like, here, if you don't trust me, you can look, and then he like high grounds her, and he's like, well, I trust you, um, but he clearly doesn't because like in all the interactions we've seen with him so far, his primary talking point with her is just that even though he's tried to smash like three or four times, all he wants to talk about is the professor. It's no wonder that she says no like every time. So at this point, Carrie wants to see the phone. Will goes and gets himself another drink. Carrie discovers the pretty pics. And Carrie wants Will to call the person who has been texting them, which I don't know who would think that's a good idea. Why would you want to talk to that person? Like, what is that conversation? I get awkward sometimes when I have to call a customer service at a place. I have no idea how you approach a phone call with like a psychotic dentist. Will's in denial about the whole thing, but he calls. There's this ghost roar, and there's some like ringing that comes through as a part of it. And Carrie wants to take the phone to the police. I don't understand why she wouldn't just take it to the police in the first place. Like, I guess she just wanted to give like the killer some heads up on this one. He freaks out and says, "Don't!" He like grabs hold of her. Will's gonna take it to the police. So then, as Will's going to take it to the police, he gets a text on the phone, and then he starts texting and driving. Kids, don't do that. It's super bad. Right? It basically tells him that he's chosen. As he sees it, roaches start swarming over his arm, and he gets all freaked out, and he chucks the phone out the window, and then he starts driving recklessly, and then he like parks his car in like the middle of the street, gets out. Roach special effects are just gone, so we just see him scratching basically nothing. Um, I feel like as the audience, if we saw it one time, it should be consistent throughout the scene, unless he's just like still just so freaked out by it. Which I mean, understandable. I would be probably. Whenever he's on the ground, he sees the teens go and pick up the phone. He chases after them, but then he doesn't quite make it. I don't know why the teens actually need the phone back at this point. Um, I, I I guess they have some calls to make. Will still follows through on his promise to go talk to the police, and there he meets Dwayne and cop number two. He's not super important. Again, he's like a one scene wonder kind of thing. So he tries to talk to him about the phone and the pictures and the being followed and stuff. But the thing is, he doesn't have any actual proof because they have the phone, and he never actually got the license plate from the charger that's following him. When they ask him about it, he knows that it starts with a six, and they just laugh at him. Uh, Rightly so. They can't really do anything, and then we cut to all three of them drinking at Rosie's, um, which it was like there was a decapitated head, and like there was roaches all over your arm, and you're just having like a chill ass night. Alicia shows up alone. She's punishing Jeff for being a jealous asshole, which I mean the irony is just it's palpable. Will doesn't want to talk; he just wants to drink and snort some coke. I think we've all been there before. Some people have been there before. I don't know. Will and Alicia end up partying through his whole shift without realizing. He grabs a bottle and they drive out. Will talks Alicia into not being sad about drinking with him. They flirt. She tells him that she's there for him. They cuddle on a beach and then they start making out. And then Will gets super aggressive and starts like trying to undress her and just force himself on top of her basically. Alicia breaks things up. Will tries again. She repeats no. Uh, and then he says that Carrie doesn't love him. She's like, well, if that's true, then that's sad. He drops her off at her house and then watches her like close the blinds. again, this movie has already featured a decapitation, and then we have this whole sequence that, like, what? Whenever Will is outside, Carrie calls. She doesn't say anything, and then she sends three photos. Will rushes home and then calmly walks to the door. He calls out for Carrie, but she doesn't answer. He finds her phone on the floor. So Carrie is staring at like a picture of a tunnel on the computer screen. And then as he comes in, she does like the I wasn't looking at porn close on it. Um, and then she's like, "Yeah, I'm really tired. I just want to go to bed." And then he's like, "Did you send the pictures?" She's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I'm just really tired." So then they lay down for bed. Uh, Will checks the house. He opens like this closet with like the kind of like scary music playing, and then it's just a roach, which was so frustrating for me. I can't describe because at this point, again, we've seen like somebody's decapitated head with like a hand coming out of the side, and instead of scaring us with stuff like that, this movie has resorted to just roaches in closets. It's like if there's a more appropriate metaphor for rock bottom, I don't know what it is. Will lays down for bed. After he lays down for bed, he goes into a dream. Whenever he's in the dream, he sees like the back of this teen sitting at a table. He goes to talk to him, and then the teen like coughs up like the bloody teeth that we saw in the picture from earlier. He says that they performed a ritual, um, and then Will called the monster into his house, which I think is crazy because I mean, like, Will's phone bill from calling that thing into his house is just going to be insane. Texting another country sometimes is pretty expensive. I can't imagine what it is for another dimension. Will's armpit itches again. He goes to the bathroom, and then when he goes to the bathroom, his armpit has like this hole in it. And then it cuts to like Will like scrubbing his arm, and I don't think Axe is gonna get rid of the other dimension that exists in your armpit. Just seems weird. And then as he's scrubbing it, there's like blood streaming down like the shower, um, which is still a downgrade from the fact that there's some kind of like void in his armpit. Carrie comes home. She asks what Dwayne said. Will lies about giving them the phone. He's like, he was shocked. He was really shocked. Carrie says that there's no missing Garrett and then calls Will out for being blasé. And then she says that people look normal on the outside, but on the inside, they're just worms. Hashtag deep. He goes through Carrie's search history. Uh, there, the teen summoned the translation of wounds, use wounds to transcend physical boundaries to connect with higher beings, which is crazy. So it's like not only do you have to call this like I don't know otherworldly thing, but you also have to have a wound. There's a lot of very specific criteria that you have to have, and you also have to be chosen. So this extra dimensional being isn't just taking anybody. It's Wilton's the bar, and then he gets asked about Eric by Dwayne, which is crazy because he just found out that like his there's another dimension and he's tending a bar right now. He can't even be bothered to take off work for the cops don't know anything about the case because of course they don't. He literally gave them like nothing to go off of. Uh, Jeffrey comes in, he's already drunk and angry. He like pushes his beers off of the thing and he's like, bring me another bartender. People like sort of hold him apart, but Jeffrey's just kind of upset and he's like, I thought we were friends. And then Will is like, we are friends. Come over here so I can hug you, which is the least threatening like thing you could probably ever say to anybody. Will sweeps up the broken beer bottles and then he stares at like a bug on the floor. And then the screen focuses into the black of the hole that the bug crawls into. Will has to be like awoken back into reality by this guy who's just repeating his name at the bar. Carrie sends this weird photo where it's like a kid on a bed and it's got the blurred face thing going on. So then Will just jumps over the counter and he just immediately runs home. Carrie sends him a weird photo It's like this little boy sitting on their bed and he's got the blurred face thing going on. So then Will just like hops over the bar and then he rushes home to like get to her. When he does get there, he rips out the whole knife drawer just for a single knife and then just throws it on the floor. If this place isn't getting robbed, it's gonna look like it. Carrie is like zombified in front of the laptop screen, staring at the tunnel, and then there's like a puddle of pee underneath her, so she's been there for a while. Will checks the house. He sees something, but he doesn't really find anything, and then he lays in bed sobbing for a little bit. Uh, Will closes the laptop and then puts Carrie into the tub, and he lets her go as the tub like turns black, and then she shoots up, and then he goes to like grab her. She's like, "Don't touch me!" And Rosie's is calling, and then Carrie and Will just sit there talking about work. There's nothing more important that they should be discussing at this point in the movie. They really need to get this situation sorted out. He asks her if she like remembers anything from last night. She says that somebody was there. The picture from earlier that he took is empty for some reason. Doug calls. They talk about work some more. Eric calls for Will, and he has a present for Will. Uh, we cut to Will staring at the portal, and then he realizes that the address bar is empty. Spooky. Will calls Alicia. She rejects him again. It's going to happen a lot throughout this movie. There's a bug stomp by Carrie at breakfast, and then at this point, Will thinks that they should break up. Um, and then she's like, okay, which, based on the movie that we've seen so far and the relationships dynamics that are in play here, I think it kind of makes sense that she's pretty chill about this. But Will is just like super butthurt, and he's like, "What do you mean, okay?" And she's like, it's cool if that's what you want." And she's like, "Yeah, I guess you could just get your stuff, and then you could move out by like the end of the day." And he's like, "I mean, that seems kind of soon." But then it's like, bro, you just broke up with her, so of course she wants you out of her apartment. So then Will tries to make the breakup as though it's about the phone, which strange because he hasn't really cared about the phone this entire time. We've mostly been busy with this relationship drama stuff. He goes to Rosie's, he drinks some more, he gets into an argument with Rosie herself. Um, and she's like, "I'll cover your shifts, don't worry about it." He's like, "Well, what if I don't want you to?" And then she's like, "Well, do you want this job?" And he's like, "Fuck your job." And he gets into a fight with a guy. It's a whole thing. Will calls Alicia. She doesn't answer. He goes to Eric and tells him like he needs to stay there. He doesn't ask. I find that to be pretty presumptuous of our main character to just walk in and go, "Hey, I need to stay here for 3 weeks." And Eric tells him no. He's not about that. He's like, "Okay, well, I'll just clean up around here then. It'll be great." And the only thing he cleans up is Eric's fridge as he goes to grab a beer. He calls Alicia again on the phone as he's sitting on the couch, and he finally gets through to her. And when he does, she basically just tells him like, "I'm done." Um, I found it really weird though because she felt the need to include, "I don't know when we'll be coming back to the bar again." Which I don't even know why you went to the bar in the first place, Alicia. We got to get your priorities in order. This is not working out. So then Eric walks out of his bedroom and he tells Will that he needs to leave. And then Will, like, boom, like up against the wall, kind of like Eric did to Jeffrey early in the movie, dramatic callback. And he's like, "Who called me?" And then Eric tells him that it was the teens that put him up to it earlier in the movie. Uh, and then Eric goes into his bedroom. Will follows him. Will finds a phone in the nightstand. The phone tells him that his present will be wrapped in flesh, and then he immediately figures out that it's like Eric is his present, or it contains his present, or something. I don't know. He opens his mouth towards like Eric's scratch marks in his face. He's like, "Complete me." Also during this scene, he's like, uh, "There's evil hidden in your heart that you don't show the world, and I wonder how it'll kill you or whatever." And he's like, I wonder what the phone will do if I call it. And then he calls it, and then Eric starts like either giving birth or getting possessed. Or like maybe there's something going inside. It's not really clear. Eric's just kind of like leaning like up and down in the bed, going, "Ooh, ah, ah." I'm messing it up a little bit, but it's very similar to that. I would say it's like that kind of thing. Um, Roaches like swarm over the room, and then they block out the camera. That is the end of the movie. This movie is kind of like that couple who like interjects fights that they've already had into unrelated conversations. This movie is like watching a weekend dad ruin his life while Pennywise does absolutely nothing in the background. This movie is like Ouija board if Ouija boards took 8 highly specific steps and the ghost had no discernible effect on anything or anyone. That's my thoughts. Those are some jokes. I hope you guys have fun. Deuces.